Thank you, Joe. All right, to dispel the misery of the world, 7 reasons you should practice meditation. Spirit exists both within you and without you. Reason number 1, spirit exists both within you and without you. Number 2, you don't have a soul. You are a soul. Number 2, you don't have a soul. You are a soul. Third reason, you're not a human being on a spiritual journey. You're a spiritual being on a journey to become fully human. We'll double back on all these. We'll be glancing at it again tomorrow, and it'll be in the Monday poem, of course. But you're not, the third one, you're not a human being on a spiritual journey. We talk about that. But this is a kind of hokey pokey we're doing here. You realize that you are a spiritual being already, and you're on a journey to become fully human. What does that mean? Yeah. So that's the third reason. Fourth, you can spend multiple lifetimes pursuing power, profit, possessions, and prestige. But in the end, there are no U-Hauls behind hearses. 5, when you suffered enough, you will begin meditation. How many lifetimes that takes? Who knows? But when you've suffered enough, you will begin the practice of meditation, I believe. 6, if you consent to the practice with cheerful perseverance, you will gradually be drawn to be still and trust the love that moves the stars. We're going to unpack that line a little bit. You will eventually, gradually be drawn to be still and trust the love that moves the stars. And then finally, number 7, fully human and fully divine, you will radiate love, mercy, and transformation to one and all. All right, well, let's just meander back through these 7 reasons for a bit. And maybe even it's almost kind of a meta reason for all the other 7 reasons, is that because we're talking about reasons for meditation, reasons you're here, reasons that you would engage in practice and get up early to do it in the morning and all that other stuff. Meditation is first and foremost a search for the God within. And I think that's across the traditions, all the major traditions. It's an inner game, you see. That's the first thing to know when we talk about meditation, is that, and Buddha, was probably the great breakthrough artist on this, because he grew up with spiritual practices of Hinduism and the basic Brahmanic practices. He didn't really get the inner tradition of Hinduism, however. He had the external practices, like many people in all cultures. They have the external practices. And I mean, you can meditate to lower your blood pressure. It'll happen. I do it every time I go for my checkup, when somebody's going to take my blood pressure. And I live my life trying to do it, lower the blood pressure. Everybody in my family, besides myself, has sort of coronary problems, starting with my father. And so it can do those kinds of things. It can calm you down. It can clarify things, like at Google, they're teaching mindfulness. So people actually will work harder and more efficiently. Well, that's all external stuff. But real meditation, the heart of it is is the heart of it, is to make this interior journey and to discover, to search for that divine presence that we've all placed out there somewhere. Most of traditional, Jehovah's on the mountain, Brahman is on the mountain, and it's all out there. You have to make an exterior journey. But ultimately, the Buddha said this is an inside job. Why are you suffering? Why are you not happy? No matter, he was a prince. He had a palace for the summer and a palace for the winter. He had all these different places he could move, pampered, but he was longing for something else, especially when he found out that even princes die. Even princes can get sick. Really? He never knew that. Princes die, even me? Yeah. So he said, So he went on a search. And so it's an inside job. So the first thing is spirit exists in some form or another. That is the strain through all the traditions, the mystic traditions, actually take you inside and say that spirit you're searching for is inside. Don't take my word for it, as the Buddha said. Run the experiment. Run the experiment. Jesus, 500 years later, said, don't take my word for it. Taste and see. So it's been validated by years of mystics. I'm reading Julian of Norwich right now, 14th century English mystic. And when she came out of the whole experience, including near-death experience with the plague, she's known for her statement, well, all will be well, and all will be well, and every manner of thing will be well. How did she get to that place? I mean, the Black Plague had killed 1/3 of England in her lifetime, and almost her near-death experience with it. And then she comes up with this. Well, because she had that inner experience. All will be well, all will be well, and every manner of thing will be well. So spirit exists both within you and without you. Mostly we assume it's without us out there somewhere. Okay. But the great insight of the meditative traditions is it's inside you. You can find it there. You will not find it out there. Nor happiness. Well, second sort of mind blower is that you don't have a soul. I grew up, Dominicans taught me I had a soul. Most people, a lot of people don't even think about that terminology anymore. They don't think soul exists or spirit doesn't exist, just material reality. Everything is transactional, but the traditions say you don't have a soul, you are a soul. And we've spent a lot of time beating around that bush when we talk about the 3 operating systems. That's my metaphor that Cynthia Bourgeau sort of put me onto, that we have these 3 operating systems. We have this kind of inner trinity, you see, of body, operating system of a body, and then the operating system of the mind, the logical left brain thing that can do words and strategy and stuff. It's really pretty brilliant. And then, but we have this, we were capable of upgrading from the body to the mind and from the mind to the heart. And the heart is this thing that we all know we have a mind. It's constantly talking to us. We know we have a body, we eat, we excrete, we have to put clothes on and whatever. But the fact that we have a 3rd operating system is, I don't tire of reminding people of that. And that you can, we've all been there, like temporarily, like with a flicker. You've had experiences when the veiling between you and God gets really thin and actually disappears for a moment. You could get a flicker of heaven on earth, but it's not too stable. And, the point is, in the spiritual journey, the journey of a soul, as Pope John the 23rd called his autobiography, he called it the journey of a soul. On the journey of the soul, the center of gravity moves. I've been doing this work for 50 years, and I mean, hacking my way in the wilderness, lost lots of times. But over time, your center of your gravity moves from the childhood operating system of the body, which we have to start with, to the mind and reason and strategy. It's fine. It's hard to say that our country is even remotely reasonable. I mean, the guys believed in reason who said, hey, we can govern ourselves and let's figure it out. And they believed in a different kind of God than the traditions do. They were deists. They believed God out there sort of set the whole ball game rolling. And then he's, he gave us a mind. And so with reason, we can figure out a reasonable way and we can govern ourselves. We didn't need a monarch, Well, yeah, that was a good idea. Yeah, it's a good idea. But if you really look at our culture and much of the world, it's the center of gravity is not even in reason. It's not even in that strategic operating system. We can get there. You can use your mind to, people pay their taxes or they don't, or they work out, they keep a roof over their head, sure. But in terms of political discourse, the way in our country elections are run, we don't elect the most reasonable person. No. And elections come and go on fear and lies, and it's mostly emotional. And the emotional, we had emotions in the childhood, of course. So we haven't even moved the center of our gravity up to where we're really a reasonable country. So the work is to be done, and let alone to go from there to a country that the center of gravity is in the heart. Now, when you hear the Dalai Lama, when you read the mystics, you're reading people whose center of gravity is sort of stable in the heart operating system, which is about love and it's about compassion and mercy. We need all that on this planet to dispel the misery of the world. We need to access that. But it's even if you're stable at, you're sort of reasonable most of the time, when something happens, trauma happens, you jump back. Same way, if you're even in the heart operating system, something happens and you can drop back a notch or two, all of a sudden you get a diagnosis, you got cancer, whatever. The traumas of life, or you just, you're going to the 4th of July parade and when somebody starts shooting you. We live with that daily now. If you're not in the parade, you're watching the news about the parade, and it makes it very hard to have a stable presence with reason, or even harder to be in your heart with an open heart to this, you see. So we have that potential, though. That's what the Buddhists call the Buddha nature. It's actually upgrading those operating systems and actually having you're stable in the heart. That's why I had the heart at the beginning, and the heart, which is that radiance that's breaking through the cracks, you see. So now the third thing is you're not a human being on a spiritual journey. You're a spiritual being on a journey to become fully human. That's a flip around. That's a flip around. And that's really, that's something to think about. That when you look out there and you just say, it doesn't even seem like there's human beings out there. War is the worst and best example of that, where it's a total dehumanizing thing, even to train for it, let alone to be caught in it. You see what goes on in war now firsthand, in what's going on in Ukraine. It's not even, animals don't even do that. Only killer, I think army ants are the only species other than human beings that actually make war on their own species. We killed 100 million of our own kind in the 20th century in all the wars. And now you have people threatening nuclear war. So to become fully human, It's a journey, but we're on it. And, meditation is the way to, we don't have that much time when you consider what we're doing with the environment and whatnot. So we need to jumpstart this whole process. Meditation is that accelerant to become human. And then just, this is we'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow. The fourth one is you can spend your whole life, you can spend lifetimes pursuing power and profit and possessions and prestige. That is the outer game, okay? But in the end, there are no U-Hauls behind hearses. You can't take it with you. It's a shallow game, and it's the game that is creating a lot of the misery. This whole thing in Ukraine and all the starvation in the world, all that. There's plenty. We could have heaven on earth, but power. People want power. They want profit. They want possessions. They want prestige, and it doesn't last. It goes out. I mean, who even knows the names of the pharaohs? They built pyramids to these guys. Who even knows those guys? So don't build your own. That's a kind of pyramid project. That you're going to leave something that'll last. Well, no, there's another game entirely, and that's to become fully human. Now, if you consent, number 6 is if you can consent to practice with cheerful perseverance. It's a consent. Consent is the big thing. You consented, you're here. But you have to have a kind of definitely perseverance, because you can sit, people come and they sit in meditation and say, I didn't feel nothing. Like I said, I don't feel nothing. And I said, that's exactly right. You don't feel nothing. There's something going on, but you can't tell it. But so it takes a lot of perseverance, and it takes a cheerful attitude. I mean, towards the whole world. All will be well, and all will be well. Every manner of thing will be well. I mean, how can Julian Norwich say that? She's touched something we haven't touched yet. Because you look at the world and you say, well, how's all this going to be well? Well, she knows something we don't. You consent to practice with cheerful perseverance, you will gradually be drawn to be still and trust the love that moves the stars. Now, that's my favorite line for sort of for heading down, down the stairway to heaven, as I like to say. Even be still. We stop our running around. We stop changing the furniture in the room to try to, if we get it just right, like the porridge, No, it's too hot. It's too cold. We're constantly tweaking the environment, thinking if I could get it just right on the outside, then I would be happy. But this is a different thing. We stop the running around. It seems insane to most people to just sit in stillness and then in silence. It takes a lot of trust. Well, what are you trusting? You're trusting the love that moves the stars. I mean, what got this whole thing going? What keeps this whole thing going, despite our attempts to fuck it up and to mess it up? Things keep coming back. Dandelions come through concrete. I mean, you got to really look at it. And there is something, the love that moves the stars. It's Dante wrote 1,000 lines of Italian poetry, 333 lines in the Inferno, going through hell. And then once you go through hell, you can climb up a 7-story mountain of purgatory, 333 lines of Italian poetry there. And then once you get to the top of the 7-story mountain, you got to walk through a wall of fire. Gee, that's great. And his guide has to stay there because the last leg of the journey to go from the Inferno, the hell that we're all living in, to train, you have to climb. But then you have to walk through a wall of fire, that's the end of purgatory. That's the meaning of purgation. You burn up these veils that are between you. And so you're finally ready to actually see paradise. Joko Beck, who's one of my favorite Zen teachers, grandmother of Zen, she said, you can't avoid paradise. You can't avoid paradise. You can only avoid seeing it because your eyes are not ready. Right? We've been working on this foundational belief that how you see is what you see. And so purgatory is real, not this later place that you go. You know, it's now, because this is purgative work when you sit and you just you drop thought, keep bringing yourself back to the silence and the listening. Something is starting to be burned up. Sometimes in the sitting, you'll even sweat through your clothes because something's burned up on a very deep level. See, so that's purgation. But trusting that there is an energy in this universe. Jesus called it love. Well, he actually called it different. You have the word love, you speak in Aramaic, but it translates to love. And love is tricky because love seems like it's romantic or has even to do with emotion. The Greek word for what Jesus said, and actually it's the word that's in, because most of the Gospels were in Greek first, was agape, which meant this sense of just, the Buddhists called it maitri. Okay, in Latin it's called caritas, but it's this energy. It's this energy that has made all this and continues to sustain all this. You know, 10 billion trillion stars in our galaxy alone. You know, who knows? You know, all of this stuff. There's an energy behind it, and Jesus, you know, comes down to us in English as love. The Buddha called it wisdom and compassion. They are the same. They are the same. There is an energy of the Buddha that's still running through this world. There's an energy of Jesus of the Christ that's still running through the world. That's what I call the love that has the power. If it has the power to move, the last line, you know, 333 times 3 is 999 lines, and the last line of the Divine Comedy is about it all boils down to the love that moves the sun and the other stars. In other words, he's reached that point. It happens to be the center of a white rose, you know, so he's going through all this architecture, but when he gets to the very center of this white rose, he's in touch with the love that moves the sun and all the other stars. Yeah, there's a power. If we're going to dispel the misery of the world, we have to tap into that, you know, and you have to be able to practice dwelling in the cave of the heart, as I call it, as moving to this area and spending some time there, tasting and seeing what that's all about. And it's not a logical process, and it's not a one-time process. It's a long-term kind of cumulative process to where you start to harness that power. So the last of the 7 is when you're fully human and fully divine, you will radiate just like a fountain. You'll just radiate love and mercy and transformation to one and all. That is the end of the journey. But along the way, we're ripening. So you don't, you know, it's not just we're all scum until we reach that point. It's some big breakthrough. No, we ripen. Every time you sit, every time you go down and dwell in the cave of the heart for a while, even when it appears nothing's happening, something is happening, you're ripening. The same way, you know, green peach on a tree needs the sun. We've used that image, peach on a windowsill. You know, every time you put yourself in the sun, and that was the symbol of the love that, you know, moves things on this planet. Global, you know, the thing that killed the dinosaurs and a whole lot of stuff was meteors. Dust came up, obscured the sun. Nothing can live without that. And but we think we can live without even thinking about that source of energy. You know, I did it. I made a mistake of that, or I mean, this is the human journey. You think that the ego power will get it done. You can maintain that illusion for 10 or 20, maybe 30 or 40 years, but then you really see it's not enough. And especially when you get to the second half of life where entropy takes over on the body, you feel the energy of the body is not what it was. There's two arcs you see in this whole journey. There's the fact that we do have a body and, 10, 20, all the energy when you're young, and you can blow through things. You can, and that's tied to the childhood operating system and the strategic operating system are the first two we have. And you can do a lot of great things there. But when you get to sort of this, whatever point it is, midlife, where every creative thing, physics will tell us, they call it entropy. At some point, you hit the top of that curve, and then you're going downhill energy-wise. Your body, I'm 72, believe me, you don't even have to be that old to start feeling like I don't have the energy I had before. So physically, those first two operating systems are really limited. Now, the third operating system of the heart, when you hit that more and more and you spend more time there, there's another arc that comes up, that's going up while the body is going down. I mean, Julian and Norwich almost died, near-death experience. And then that's the opening. It's what Jesus said, you have to die to yourself to be reborn. There's that other arc. And if all you've got is that first arc, if you have no even notion that there's anything else other than the body and material existence, we're living in a kind of flat land now where we think material reality is all there is. If you're living in that world, well, second half of life is really scary. It's got to be. Because I don't care how many facelifts you're having. People are working out like crazy. They're doing Pilates. That's all okay. It's not bad. But there's a kind of, we're worried more about losing our mind even than losing our bodies because we're living so long, so much information coming in and out, sort of wears out. So we're worried about dementia. So we're doing Sudoku like crazy. But that's all fear, you see. It's fear-based. And you are going to run out of gas. This body's going to run out of gas. This mind's going to run out of gas. And if you haven't actually developed this other arc, it's not really an arc, it's another direction that's on the rise. Hasn't still going, how many billions of years in this universe, and it's still expanding, it's still going. What is that force? That's love. See, the first two operating systems run on fear, and they're transactional. But that, you cannot transactional yourself out of old age and death. There's no transaction. You can make a deal with the devil like Faust, but that didn't even work out that great. There was a movie where Bette Midler was in it, Three Witches. They make a deal with the devil to never die. But they don't, part of the deal, the fine print was they forgot to say, well, so my body will feel like, so they're dragging through life feeling 300, and it's pretty, they missed that little fine point. There is no way out of this downward entropy thing. But all I can say is if you discover a spiritual practice, and usually it's done in the second half of life, unless you have trauma in the first half. I've got younger people that work on one younger person. She had a near-death experience when she was 20 that sort of triggered her into this dimension. But normally it's midlife, and then you feel the arc of energy going down, and it's a bit scary because you see other people are dying, and people your age are dying, people younger than you are dying. So what do you have to deal? How do you deal with that? Can't workout won't do it, facelifts won't do it, conditioning cream won't really do it. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things, but this other arc, it's not even an arc, this other force to start releasing from the heart to become more and more moving to that. And if you're stable in that at the point of death, that's good. That's where the Dalai Lama is. He's not worried about death because he's sort of stabilized in that heart operating system. It's the heart can deal with the mystery of death. Who knows? I mean, I don't know what death's going to bring because, I've died recently. And if I have, I've forgotten it. But it's a mystery, just like birth is a mystery. We're trying to legislate this mystery of birth and conception. It's a liminal area, just like death. It's a liminal area. I've been in the presence of it with my parents. It's not like what we call normal reality. You're in a very thin place when people are graduating to this next realm, to this bigger mystery. Well, people come out of this bigger mystery. Two people get together, and then there's this mystery of conception and birth. And the fact that a bunch of people can legislate this, and they don't even know what they're talking about. What is this? Where is, we'll talk a little bit tomorrow about, there's a big difference if you're a member of a tribe, that's one thing. Merton wrote a lot about it when he was talking about groupthink in the 50s when he was writing. He said, most of us are just caught in a group and we think like the group. And that is on the level of the lowest operating system. Maybe a little bit into the, we can form language and slogans like, make America great again, or, whatever, left or right. You have talking heads on all the programs and they're just talking these things. Yeah, and it's kind of groupthink. You're a member of a tribe. That's all right. But that's not what it means to be fully human. Well, then you're going to become an individual. When your center of gravity actually moves to the left brain strategic system, and that's your center of gravity, well, then you think for yourself. That's a big thing. There's not that many people. We haven't even moved to that in our own culture where reason is making these decisions on a big level. Some of us have moved there. We have the whole spectrum on an individual level, on a personal level. But so there's a big difference between being an individual and a tribal member. We all start out in the tribe. And every time Notre Dame football comes up, I'm back in the tribe. No doubt about it. Ask my wife, kill that guy, So, I mean, it's great when it's sport because, in 2 hours, you can go back to being reasonable. There's nothing reasonable about college football or any kind of sport, really. But so that's all right. But, you don't live there. Well, a lot of people live there. But then when you can think for yourself, you can have your own viewpoint depending on, you don't have to vote the way your parents voted or the way you're, Merton was talking about that. He called that an individual. Teilhard de Chardin called that the individual. So there's tribal, there's the individual. And then when you actually reach the heart dimension as your stable place, that's what Teilhard and Merton would call a person. That's the journey to becoming a human being. You have to go that whole journey. That's why people give automatic weapon to an 18-year-old. You're not going to get a good result because they might not even be reasonable, but anybody can buy one now. It just defies logic. And that's the problem. That's why we have so much misery. 18-year-old, they're not very evolved. They're not even an individual, maybe. They're thinking like the tribe. And they've had trauma and all that. But just that tribal, individual, personal, to really be a person. We all think we're human beings. It's nonsense. Human beings don't do this kind of stuff. They don't mow down people. They don't attack other countries and just blow up cities. Human beings don't do that. Leaders of tribes, and then people follow those guys and do that. The Dalai Lama said, from his perspective, that's where you understand when he says, war is outmoded. It's a tribal thing, you see. And what's behind it? Power, profit, possessions, what you do with profit. You have your yacht with another boat in it. That's a game some people are playing. And then finally prestige. These are the kind of people on TV. These are the kind of people that we think are celebrities, great people. Think about I looked around one time to loosely follow all the people are on the wall. Probably the net worth of all the people on my wall is probably zero. They had no IRAs, none of these people. They had no house even like this, There was, these the people that I admire, and most of them didn't have any hair, that I look around, this So I mean, really, you know, Mother Teresa, she wasn't glamorous. You know, my grandmother wasn't glamorous, but they had a presence that changed me just by being in their presence, made me more of a human being. Those people, you know, those people. There's hopefully at least one in your life history that just being around that person, just thinking of that person's name, even if they're even passed away, it makes you feel like more of a human being. These are the sons in your life that ripen you, you see, but nothing to do with power and profit and all that kind of stuff. But so many people play that game. They think that's the only game to play. It is not. It is not. You know, the tradition stands for that, and you know, I speak from that tradition. That it's not the only game. As a matter of fact, it's a zero sum game. Most of us are zeroed out. In the end, all of us are zeroed out if you're playing a zero sum game. You see, where a few win this economic game in this country, in this world, a very few, and most people lose. You know, one of the famous epithets that came out of the mouth of our previous president: "What a loser! We'll be doing so much winning." Well, I don't know. I mean, that whole win-lose thing had nothing to do with the heart. It comes from the strategic operating system. I won every argument with my wife the first 7 years of our marriage. Oof. You know, it's not a zero-sum game. So, yeah, where we end up, if you're lucky, it's our potential. The Buddha nature is your potential. The Christ nature is your potential. Is that you become a force for love and mercy. You know, Ron here, he lived in a place that became known as Matthew 25 eventually, which is corporal works of mercy. People are hungry, you feed them. That's what human beings do. People don't have a house, you give them refuge. You know, people die, you bury them. You know, these are human things for human beings, and you know, not what goes passes for it. So that idea of to go from tribal to individual to personal. So a person is a long way away. To say this little fetus is a person at that point, I mean, you think about that a little bit, as opposed to maybe the mother whose life's in danger, who's bearing this child. Really, we need to go beneath these slogans and really consider this stuff, and that the mother who's carrying this child, who's at least probably an individual, maybe even a person, she has no say in it. It gives you pause to think about that. When you think about the word, you know, to be a fully human being, how many of them have you met in your life? Do you want to be one? I do. These guys on my wall here: Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, you know, Mary Magdalene. These are guys I look up to because they did the journey, and you can do it too. That's the one thing teachers have told me, and the Dalai Lama will say it all the time. He says, "There's nothing special about me." He says, "I'm just a normal person. The Buddha nature is inside, waiting for you to discover. You see, and you know, again, like one of the poems in the new book of poems, the real Olympics will not be televised. It might be zoomed, but you know, it's this work that we do to become a human being. You know, you can work for 4 years to run a race that, if you win, lasts less than 10 seconds. That makes sense to us. But to spend time trying to become fully human and fully divine at the same time, that's a big, those Olympics aren't normally televised, but you're training. That's what we're here for. Okay, so we're going to take about a 15-minute pause, and then we'll be back, and then go back into the training. You know, we'll do a couple more sits. But take a little time, stay in the silence for this 15 minutes. And maybe if you haven't, if you've just been listening, haven't been writing, fine, then just put it out on the page. What resonated with you from this 45 minutes here? All right, I'll see you in 15.